Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again. We are here Friday morning, May 15th, deep in the heart of the coronavirus pandemic, again, trying to figure out how do we transition from having been on, shelter in place, lockdown, quarantine status, and trying to figure out how do we move from that? How do we rejoin society, try to open communities back up, parks, beaches, recreation, work, social, so many levels. And it's a really, really complicated situation as we're all seeing play out. And, there's many, many different layers. There's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of unknowns. And unfortunately, there's a growing, debate and political machination around this in terms of, different groups with their different values. And so it's, proving to be a difficult next chapter. So we'll talk through some of those details today. We're grateful to have you here with us. And as usual, we have Dr. Ramzi Asfour with us this morning. He'll be giving us a medical update, and we'll jump into a Q&A after that as well. And we have a couple of special guests today too. We have Kathleen Mitchell, who is a health coach and nutritionist. She'll be giving us a short talk today. And we also have my friend and colleague, Nick Laufrey, who will be back with us to provide a short Qigong exercise. And as always, we're very grateful to have Valerie Keim with us to guide us on some stress reduction and mindfulness exercises. And, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Ramzi, if you want to switch over to your talk, I will go ahead and stop my screen share. One sec. Okay, go ahead. You're muted, Ramzi. I'm sorry, I don't hear you if you're talking.
Hi, everybody. So it's been another busy week in coronavirus pandemic world, I suppose. And we've got a few updates for you and want to leave ample time for questions. We are at 4.5 million cases worldwide, with the US edging close to a quarter of those cases, and Russia now the biggest hotspot in Europe, which is new, I think, from last week. And total daily cases worldwide remain stable overall. And this is what the US map looks like, with the total number of deaths rising pretty steadily as we are opening many states now at this point to a lockdown. The red areas are county level data with more significant activity in terms of rates of infection. So this is the 5-day moving average of daily confirmed new cases. And in the US, even as testing capacity has increased, the total number of cases is decreasing. If you back New York out of that equation, however, the total number of US cases is relatively steady. So this might be misleading if you're including New York, which obviously has the highest number of cases, so that their cases are going down, but other places are actually going up. So bear in mind that this map does not include Russia, but it does include places like Belgium and Iran. And it looks like, I'm a little colorblind here, but I think that this line looks like Brazil peaking. There we go. It is Brazil. So activity there in a warmer climate, right? So that's somewhat perturbing. So a lot of people are saying, what happened in Sweden? I'll show you different ways of looking at that. But Sweden did not do a full lockdown, but Sweden has seen 27% more deaths. So excess mortality, that's one way to measure indirectly what's happening with an outbreak, an epidemic, is excess mortality. So Sweden has had 27% more deaths than normal during the outbreak, whereas places like Norway has had many fewer. So a neighboring country, that's quite significant. So Sweden is kind of up there in the same coloring as France and Italy in terms of death rates or cases per million. We'll look at that. Here, if you look at Sweden, which is, oops, I think I lost it somewhere. Here it is. Sweden, their deaths per million is 361. And you look at Norway, which is or Finland, their neighbor, is only 53. And Norway was much lower. Here it is, at 43. So they are having excess deaths. This is a trade-off between, business and deaths. What do you choose? It's a tough question, right? So there's definitely arguments on both sides. We're seeing that. Just what's happening in the United States with the University of Washington projections, still projected number of cases, confirmed infections obviously rising, and probably exponentially. And again, this is the number of in infections. It's more useful to look at it on statewide data. Texas, which has opened up, if you look at that, they're expecting a relatively steady number of ill people. So, and they're not, their daily death toll could spike higher. We don't know that yet, but it looks like they're projecting a fairly steady decline, but we don't know what we're going to see out here. This only goes to August 1st. What's going to happen after August 1st? That's another question. Same with Georgia, similar scenario. This is the daily deaths, might not increase so much, but the jury is out yet on that. And same thing with Florida, which I think in the interest of time I'll skip over. Washington, D.C. is having a significant activity now, and they are actually expected to sort of stagger down in their daily deaths, but I don't think that'll ever reach zero, although that's what the model is predicting here. Going to CDC data, I thought this was interesting to inform on the pattern of illness for influenza. This is from the H1N1 flu outbreak, and a little bit tricky to interpret this graph. So I'll do my best to explain it. So this is the year 2006. This is week 50. So this is the end. This is December of 2006. This is January of 2010. And this would be week 40. So week 40 is probably somewhere in October. So this is influenza-like percent of visits for influenza-like illness, which is a surrogate marker for actual diagnoses of influenza. And so this year, this is the 2006-2007 flu season, wasn't a bad one. Then you look at the 2007 flu season. This is December right here of 2007. And it was a pretty big flu season. And then you look at 2008, week 20. So you're into the spring by week 20, and you have very little activity. Okay, 2008, week 50. This is December. Not much is happening, right? 2009, week 10, a little bit of activity. Week 10 is February. Week 20 is probably early April. Maybe a little spike. That didn't happen here. If you look at week 20 here, there was not much. Week 20 here, not much. That's a normal flu season, okay? This is H1N1. You guys all probably remember that. That was the swine flu in 2009, 2010. So you had an uptick in activity. And look what happened here. Week 30, so week 30 is just past mid-year, and we're into the fall, early fall. So we're at week 35 maybe. We're starting to see significant activity and a big spike in activity. So could this be what happens with COVID-19? Certainly possible. Are we going to see big spikes, or are we going to see, sort of waves, ebbs and flows? We don't know, but given the history of flu epidemics and really bad epidemic years, like the 2009-2010 H1N1 flu pandemic, we might see an early rise in cases in the fall. And I'll add in, especially if social distancing or physical distancing measures are tightened, are relaxed too significantly. This is also from the CDC, just to show you, this is slightly different metrics. These are positive cases of influenza, percent positive confirmed cases. So the yellow being influenza A, and there's an influenza A and influenza B, and this is this flu season. Okay, so this is 2020 week 6. This is 2020 week 14, and we're out over here already. So the flu activity. This was an impressive flu season, but you can see that overall flu activity had kind of a nice bell shape if you flatten this out, and that's probably not what we're going to see in an epidemic year. This is an interesting study from CDC, Emerging Infectious Diseases. This isn't not yet officially published. This is a outbreak associated with an air conditioning in a restaurant in Guangzhou. And I wanted to draw your attention to this. And as I think I've told many of you, we're helping a lot of businesses get back to work and schools. And one of the things we're thinking about is airflow. So look at this airflow panel or pattern. There's an air conditioning unit here, and there's an exhaust fan here. And so the airflow goes from here and back. And so what if you have, and this is a real outbreak. So here's your index case, the first case. So when you have a case here at table A with SARS-CoV-2 infection or COVID-19, then that person transmitted the infection, and they did strain typing. They did a very nice analysis on this. These people got sick. All the people with a circle got sick, and none of the people over here got sick. So why? Well, that's because of airflow, and you can see the airflow pattern in this room. So that there's an exhaust fan here, so it kept the airflow going back and forth, and maybe the air conditioner would kick on and kick off, causing variations in airflow, but still along this pattern, as you did have an exhaust fan here. All of these things need to be considered in an office environment, in a restaurant, in getting back to work. So this is quite interesting, and a lot of it is, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, including who's doing the transmitting, but we're finding out it's a lot of asymptomatic people that are transmitting, because you can screen for symptoms. You can screen for a fever. You can screen for a cough, change in taste, or a loss of taste, loss of smell are symptoms now. Diarrhea, nausea, those are symptoms. You can screen for those, but you can't screen for somebody who has no symptoms who might be transmitting. The only thing you can do is test, and that's not necessarily practical. So you have to consider measures like airflow and a whole bunch of other things in considering this. The White House has said they should test all nursing home residents and staff for COVID-19. I think that's coming to hospitals too. In 2 weeks' time, my guess is that every hospital in California will be testing every admission for COVID-19 and every staff member. So that's coming, and I think that will help us to remain open, because in the absence of a vaccine or effective treatment for everybody, you are going to have to figure out other strategies to keep healthcare facilities especially open and working optimally. Some governors are rejecting those recommendations. In Texas and California, they have accepted them pending availability of protective equipment and other and testing swabs, etc. But we do have enough testing swabs in California at this time. We've received plenty for now, and hopefully the supply will only continue to ramp up. So you've heard about a lot of this in the media and testimony before Congress and people denying things. But yes, my opinion is the US did have a lot of early warnings, and the ramp up was way too slow. And there are a lot of challenges for a vaccine. This is going to be a problem, as Dr. Fauci said in testimony this week, that we could have a vaccine. What if it's like the RSV vaccine? For those of you who don't know, respiratory syncytial virus is RSV. There was a vaccine developed for that. That causes severe problems in younger children usually, or people with transplant who have received transplant transplants, organ transplants, etc. And that's been a vaccine that when you get vaccinated, you get some antibody production, but you actually do worse if you go on to develop the disease. So is there a guarantee that our vaccine will be, when it's developed, will actually help or will it hurt? We don't know that at this time. So more on that to come. Plus, there's the whole anti-vaxxer campaign issue. Uh, those people who oppose vaccinations are, they lump all, they don't want to lump anybody, but some people lump all vaccines in the same group. And there's already a lot of misinformation there about a COVID vaccine while one doesn't even exist. So keep that in mind, that there's going to be a lot of controversy. Let's see what's best, both from a safety perspective, patient safety, and the public health perspective, and then we'll make an informed decision on whether or not people should get vaccinated. Oops, that was our website. Sorry. The as states reopen, fears of new outbreaks are growing. You can see that this is significantly in bars, beauty shops, other businesses. We're concerned about those sort of high touch, high contact, close contact facilities. Masking rules are not being uniformly adopted and enforced, which is a concern. Masking is the best intervention for source control. So you want everybody else to be wearing a mask. So that's Trump's strategy, I guess, because he's not wearing a mask. But you do want everybody else to be wearing a mask so that you don't get their droplets. And that is proven to be effective. So that if we don't enforce masking, it's going to be harmful. We're going to have more transmission. This is an article about Denmark, and I just wanted to point out, this is a little maybe social commentary, but McDonald's workers in Denmark pity us. I thought this was a very interesting article in the New York Times because of the strong social structures and social safety nets that Denmark, which is not a socialist country, by the way, has implemented. And they have twice as much testing capacity, half as many deaths as we do. So, their workers at McDonald's get, they get vacation. I think they get at least 4 weeks a year of paid vacation. They get all this kind of these benefits. They get maternity leave, paternity leave. They get things that, and they get sick leave. They can leave work and they will have a job. So we don't honor that in this country. And during a public health crisis is when it matters most, and is when we'll see the effects of not having a solid safety net system in place. So our new coronavirus czar says that finding a vaccine is a credible goal by January. But if you read the subtext here, he acknowledged that the 12 to 18 month timeline cited by Dr. Fauci was already very aggressive. So my interpretation, my opinion, we are not going to have a widespread accepted vaccine available until sometime in 2021. And what I mean by widespread is, with manufactured capacity, acceptance, enough safety data to be able to distribute that widely. So I don't think that's going to play much of a role now in 2020 at least. There are more breakthroughs reported every day. Which can you believe? Which are going to really pan out? Again, science will say, but it might take some time. I always like to look at both sides of the equation, not just what the New York Times has to say, but on Breitbart, they're talking about demonstrators flock to the capitals. They're talking about aggressive anti-street museum art in Los Angeles. So listen, being an infection prevention specialist like myself, you're not always the good guy. In fact, if people like you too much, you're not doing a good enough job, because your job is to say, hey, this is too high risk, it's unreasonable. And when you do your job well, nobody will ever know that you've done it well because there isn't an outbreak. There isn't you avoided a problem, or the problem isn't as bad as it would have been otherwise. So that's what governors on both sides are facing. They're saying, well, I'm slowing transmission, but the economy is hurting, but people aren't dying as much. But what's showing? What are people feeling? Well, they're feeling their pocketbooks. So it's a very difficult decision and very difficult place to be in, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. So just keep that in mind. It's a really challenging uh, place to be. I wanted to show another comment on what's happening in the rest of the world. You've heard about people spoiling, having to euthanize hogs because they're gaining more than 300 pounds and they can't slaughter them. And our commercial meatpacking industry is so consolidated now that another reason to advocate for family farms and not eating that way. But there's a lot more food insecurity due to COVID-19 worldwide, including in the United States, than we usually see. So this is a major issue causing a lot of insecurity for a lot of people, and there's going to be deaths because of food insecurity, which should not be happening in the 21st century. So that's all I have. There's some questions already. Let's get down to them. Somebody asked
Let me
if.
do a, sorry, Ramsey, to interrupt.
Sure.
Thank you for that. Let me do a quick, I just want to present one blog post before we jump into questions, because it will also, I think, help to address some of the questions that are on the list. If some of you are on my partner Chris's webpage or email list, you probably got this email. I think it went out yesterday, but it was based on a blog post by an epidemiologist named Aaron Bromwich on the East Coast. And so he put up this very, very informative blog post on May 6th called "The Risks, Know Them, Avoid Them." And it goes through a number of different factors, which I think are really important for us to consider. He talks a lot about, a lot of the data that Dr. Asfour just went through, where are people getting sick? And it's really, this formula that we're thinking about, in terms of how much exposure you're getting, right? So the exposure to virus over time, basically. And so basically we're looking at about 1,000 viruses as probably the minimum threshold to get sick. And thinking about, well, what different environments potentially have the opportunity or the possibility of exposing us to that much virus. Bathrooms, public bathrooms, not just the surfaces, but there's also the viral material that's potentially there in the stool and could be actually aerosolized by the toilet flushing. Coughing, a cough close to you or even not so close to you, up to 3,000 droplets, 50-mile-per-hour ejection rate. These can obviously stay in the air, travel across the room. Sneezing 10 times that much and up, 200 miles an hour. So if the person is infected, a single cough or sneeze has the opportunity to spread a huge number of viruses into that local environment. There's more, information about breathing and sort of proximity, and there's some questions on that today that we'll touch on. But there are droplets that can be passed by breathing, obviously, and it depends, just normal breathing versus talking, proximity to the person, and then is it just talking, or is it speaking loudly and more animatedly, and or singing? So again, successful infection equals exposure to the virus over time, right? So we've talked a lot about asymptomatic people. I want to move down to, different, and Dr. Asfour touched on these, right? But some of the biggest super spreader events that we saw, meatpacking, big events, wedding, funerals, birthdays, 10% of those were accounting for the early spreading events, business networking, conferences, etc. Dr. Asfour presented this example of the restaurant that they studied in China, and also this is a call center, where the sick person was in this area of the call center, and a significant number of people in that business were then infected. There's also the example of the choir community in Washington State. They were aware of the virus. They took steps to minimize the transfer. They didn't shake hands. They didn't hug hello. They brought their own music to not share papers. They socially distanced themselves during practice. they tried to stay far apart from each other, in a rehearsal hall the size of a volleyball court. They were there for a couple of hours, but again, singing as opposed to just talking produced more respiratory droplets. And over the course of 4 days, 45 of the 60 choir members developed symptoms and became sick. Indoor sports, there was a curling event in Canada, 72 attendees. Again, there is this fair amount of close contact there, heavy breathing, 24 of 72%, 72 people, sorry. Birthday parties, funerals. So obviously, kind of scary, sobering. But the commonality to think about as we're moving forward and trying to find a path forward towards reopening is that, all of these high risk events were indoors. People were closely spaced for the most part. There was talking, singing, or yelling. The main sources that we're seeing are social gatherings, restaurants, public transportation, workplace, and some in the home, but close contacts, obviously, of an infected person. That's accounting for 90% of all transmission events, right? So, the social distancing is very important in this regard, as we've been discussing. Dr. Osfor's point of wearing a mask, protecting yourself and others around you, and so things like grocery store, less of a risk if you're going in as a shopper and they're controlling the amount of people who are moving through that space. There's a high air volume in the store, restricted amount of time you spend in the store. Your opportunity then to receive that infectious dose is lower. However, for the store worker, again, extended period of time exposure to a lot of more people, definitely higher risk for them. And just ongoing deep gratitude for all of those frontline people who are serving us and making it possible for us to, for the most part, be, quarantined and receiving shipments from, you name it, retailer, or, going to the store or the farmer's market in a controlled manner, or, so the frontline healthcare workers, obviously very high risk, and really, really deep gratitude and appreciation for all of the important work that they're doing to keep as many of us healthy and alive as possible. So outside, walking past someone, again, thinking about dose and time, so if you'd have to basically be in the airstream of that person for 5+ minutes for a chance of infection. Obviously, if they're running and they're breathing heavily, or they cough or sneeze next to you, that changes the variable a little bit. But again, physical distance and the risk of infection in those scenarios is quite low. And so, again, this is aaronbromage.com. The risks, know them, avoid them. There's other links in here that are quite helpful. So a lot to think about, and things that are obviously very concerning, but also some opportunities there for us to move forward in as evidence-based and as careful a way as possible. So with that, let's jump into the questions. And if anybody has additional questions, please do add them to the chat box.
So people were asking, some of the restaurant guests who got sick in that diagram were 10 feet apart. The question comes down to airflow, and that's something that we don't consider in just the physical distance, right? So you got physical distance, but you also have the flow of air. And in hospitals and even nursing homes, we think about the flow of air, but in day-to-day settings, we don't. So when we're going to evaluate, my team goes to a school and evaluates that, or an office, we're talking about airflow. I've helped a dentist get in, and we talked about airflow. We calculated air exchanges per hour, and this dentist has a tremendous number of air exchanges per hour, increased by, he's in San Francisco. You don't want to have the windows open all the time. It's, it could be snowing outside in winter, just kidding, but it could be really cold. And but if you have a high number of air exchanges or air cleansing cycles per hour, that really significantly reduces the risk. So putting a HEPA filter in a restaurant can significantly reduce risk of transmission through that pattern that we saw, but also at least thinking about the airflow. You don't have to calculate it. There's a lot of calculators out there, but certainly that's something to consider, and we've been helping with that. How long must somebody wait to interact with somebody who recently recovered from COVID-19? So CDC has several strategies, but the safest is 10 days. So minimum of 10 days from when they recovered from their symptoms. You can add in, okay, if they recovered, the rule is 10 plus, ideally I would do 10 plus 7. So 10 days from the initial infection, adding on up to 7 additional days from the time when they had significant improvement. So that means, did they have if they had a cough or not, if they might have a residual cough, but if the cough got a lot better, or if they were in oxygen and now they're not in oxygen, that's when that 7-day clock starts. So it can be prolonged, but in general, there are guidelines, and the county public health authorities are advising those patients themselves when they can enter the community. And I would stick to those guidelines. They're very well thought out. Back to the dentist, is it safe to visit a dental office? A lot of them are using all these fancy devices, some of which are proven and some of which are not. I think you have to take into context the whole picture. And as long as you're not likely to be exposed to somebody else, then I think it's safe. The dentists are going to be wearing N95s, so they're unlikely to expose you directly. So I think it's relatively safe in that regard. And then talking about if staff members, maybe for healthcare, are tested negative, how often should they be retested, or in a restaurant or in a facility? Well, that's a good question and difficult. It depends on supplies. It depends on the population and the risk calculations. So if you had a test where you could test for COVID with a non-invasive test or just a little swab in the nose, then, and the test was really good, then absolutely that should be done more often, even once a week or even every day. But the test, for example, the Abbott test they're using in the White House, we're seeing it's only about 70% sensitive. So it's missing a lot of cases. That's not acceptable for a healthcare setting. And we've seen people transferred from hospitals to nursing homes, tested negative on Abbott, but later developed symptoms and then tested positive at the nursing home. So that's a problem. It depends on what testing platform you're using. The Abbott's useful, but if it's negative, you've got to reflex it to a more sensitive test, like the Roche test, for example. So that gets tricky. And somebody's asking about a holistic dentist uses ozonated water to rinse mouth. So they have new HVAC systems to isolate each operatory. I love that. And air scrubbers, perfect. In the process of remodeling the operatories, front desk, and lobby to minimize transmission. We had recently purchased new equipment that will be used chairside to reduce respiratory and dental aerosols. Great. There's a lot of dentists that I know that are remodeling because everybody went to these beautiful open offices, but that's wrong. You should not have done that. It should be closed individual rooms where you close the door. And that's, I think, what's happening. That's your best level of protection. And I think reasonable.
Yeah, dentists really have a super high need. We need that care, but for dentists, for a business model to be able to keep themselves open and help patients feel safe, are really under the gun to figure out how to do that and how to create a safe environment and remodel and change their workflows around. So it's a very important area there. For people who did want a link to the Aaron Bromwich article, I did put that into the chat box there. And again, you can just search Aaron Bromwich, the risks, know them, avoid them. So with that, Kathleen Mitchell, I'd love to invite you up to the speaker platform. So you just want to unmute yourself, and I think that there's no screen being shared. So when you're ready, you can click share screen and activate that, and we should be able to see your slideshow. Please welcome everybody, Kathleen Mitchell, who will be giving us a short talk. Great. Yeah, I do see your slides, and they are full screen, and that looks great.
Thank you so much. So I appreciate. Okay, great. So I just thought I would back out a little bit and present this little conversation, Back in Balance. And really, as we hear, there is so much information, and it's very technical, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming at times, I think, even to us as healthcare practitioners. And so I think what it would be really helpful to make us all feel empowered that we are able to do something to affect our health and to obviously heal ourselves and strengthen our immune system at the same time. And so what I've created is really a slideshow. And I just want to say that for all of us, we just want to begin from where we are right now. And whenever I talk about the body, I always like to think about how does it operate? How is it designed? And so I like to think about the anatomy and the physiology of our body. And so I liken our body really to an orchestra. And every part of our body has a job to do. It's finely tuned, just like each instrument. So a flute has a job, and the drums will be different. All parts of our body, they're all independent, but together they work. They're very interconnected. And the same with the instruments in a symphony. So they each have their own note that they can play, but when they play together, they can create this beautiful sound, this beautiful symphony. And I said our body works well until it doesn't. And that's what kind of happens. And just like a symphony, say if the flutes kind of miss a few notes, you might not notice. But if the entire trumpet section is off, then you're really going to notice loud and clear. And I think that's what happens in our body. When our body gets off balance, it starts to at first give a little bit of a whisper until finally it starts to scream and shout. And so I'd like to just ask all of us right now, how are we feeling? I mean, that's a lot of information going on. There's been a lot of things going around, a lot of information, some misinformation. How are we feeling right now? Are we feeling in balance? Are we feeling out of balance? Ideally, the body's designed to operate in balance, but we know that imbalance creates illness. And illness really is a state of dis-ease within the body. So the body is not functioning well. It's not, playing this beautiful symphony for us. It's starting to squeak and sputter. So we know that imbalance creates illness, but we know when we can bring our body back into balance, that's how we create the wellness. And as a noun, wellness says it's a state of being in good health, especially as an actively pursued goal. And how do we really rebalance the body to create wellness? Hippocrates, who many of us have heard about, was a Greek physician born in 460 BC. And he was referred to as the father of medicine. And he had a lot of wisdom and some very profound statements that we still refer to today. And one of them was, the body has the ability to heal itself if given the right circumstances. And so we know that naturally the body wants to heal itself. It naturally wants to be balanced. So the question then becomes like, what are the right circumstances? What do we need to offer our bodies? And again, there's just so much information. Where do we begin? And that's why I'm really trying to just like back it up to make us feel like we all are in charge and that we can all do something. So the answer is relatively simple. And I like to talk about two types of foods. And these are the foods that feed us and the foods on our fork. And here's some of the foods that feed us. I know it's a little bit hard to read here, but I try to make the ones in white. They just kind of pop out all the things that we need, family, community, connection, touch, movement, feeling passion, positivity, laughter, love, all these different things that you can see. And I'm sure there's certain foods here, lifestyle things that maybe perhaps I don't have up here. The foods that feed us, they are other than what's on our fork. As you could see, they are lifestyle choices, but they are needed in these really generous heaping portions. And we need these foods or these lifestyle choices to make us feel really satisfied and really supported. Then we have the second type of food, and that is the foods on our fork. That's typically what we tend to think about. And these foods are just as important. And here we have proteins, fruits, vegetables, fats, waters, grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. But of course, these foods are different for everyone. For many people, we're not suggesting that they're eating grains and whatnot. Everybody's body is a little bit different, but these foods are equally as important. And of course, food has a lot of specifics, you know, seasonal, local, fresh is best. So we always want to be doing our best to choose our best food choices based on our circumstances and based on what our bodies need. The other important thing about the foods is they can feed our microbiome. And of course, that's really important because our microbiome, mostly located in our gut, is communicating with our immune system. So we want these good guys to be really strong, and we can really help them by feeding them lots of fermented and cultured foods and fruits and vegetables with these fibers, these good fibers. But really, it's all about the balance. And the body really needs to be in its best balance to be best effective. So when I think, what is it that I can suggest that people can do? I want to suggest that they try to bring their body back into balance. And you really need both foods. You can't, like, everyone's like, oh, eat, you know, the healthy broccoli and your fruits and vegetables. But, you know, if you're not sleeping at night, it's very hard to get that ideal balance. And it sounds simple and everybody's like, yeah, I know. But when you actually try to do it and you actually try to pick something, it's a little bit harder. It can be a little bit harder to do, but the results are profound. And so I want to just do an exercise while we're all here today. I know that we just have a little bit of time, but I don't want to just talk and then say, this is what you do. I want to just have us take a minute to try it. So if we look back at the foods that feed you, and you can, those are the lifestyle foods that might be missing from your plate. So if you can just, I'll show you the list again in just a second. And if you can pick just one of those lifestyle foods that you think that you need more of, and that you can just imagine that if you had a little bit more of it, how you would feel. So let me just go back to the list again. So here's a list, and if you just kind of scan this list, or if there's something that you already know that you need, if you want to just hold that in your mind for a minute and just kind of think of that. And then we want to do the same thing with the foods on our fork. Is there one food that you know is missing? Is there one food, you know, even if it's just clean, clear, fresh water, that you know, oh gosh, I wish I were eating more of that. I tend to be going in this direction, but I know I should be eating more of this. And just kind of think of what that one food, we just want to focus on one thing. And here's the foods again, just as a reminder, you already know. And so you want to ask yourself, which of these lifestyle choices is going to bring you better balance, and which of these nutritional choices is going to move you in the right direction. And the question really is, do we already know what we should be doing? And the answer for most of us is yes. Most of the time, we do know what it is that we should be doing. And what we find is when we're trying to incorporate something, that it's a lot easier to add in something than it is to take something out. And also when you're trying to incorporate something, it's a lot easier if you attach it to something that you're already doing. Say, I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to drink more water before I have that cup of coffee. So if you link it to something that you're doing, but just remember that adding in just even one thing is going to just tip the scale. And that's what we're trying to do. So you want to add in something, and you want to repeat. You want to work on, you know, a lifestyle, just one lifestyle choice, one nutritional choice. And when that's feeling pretty good, you can go back and repeat. A lot of times, as we all know, habits can be hard to form, but they can also be hard to break. And many times when we're thinking of doing something, all of a sudden we can quickly come up with a roadblock as to why we can't do that, or why it's not going to work, or something. It's kind of a natural tendency to think, oh, I like to do that, but I can't. So I'm challenging you today, and I'm asking you today if you might think of that one lifestyle choice or that one food that you have chosen to add in, and think, what might be hard about me doing that? And kind of call yourself on that roadblock, and then consider how you can reroute around that roadblock. So once you put that out on the table and you see what it is, then you can spend a little time and think, how am I going to reroute around that roadblock? And really, we know that the choices that we make can move us closer or further away from health. And so if I go back again, you know, to what we're trying to do, and we're trying to support our health and our healing, and, you know, support our immune system, and that sense of security and that sense of hope, and that we have a feeling that we can do something, we really have to know that the choices we make are very powerful, even though they might be just one small step. You know, I like to say they could, we can actively climb up our slope of health, or, you know, consciously climb up, or we could slip down. So I think by not doing anything, you know, is probably the worst part. I don't want to say the worst part, but really we want to just choose to climb up. And the other part to notice is when we put on our curiosity cap, when we make a choice, we really want to notice how we feel, and that can really propel us. Or we can say, geez, I tried that and it didn't feel good. And that's as powerful information as something that worked well, because it tells us that maybe we're going in the wrong direction. So I like to have this sentence that I use myself and with patients: when I do this, I feel this way. But when I do this, I feel this way. So you're actively making that connection between what you do and how you feel. So if I circle back around here, I want to encourage everyone to start from exactly where they are now. You don't need to prepare for anything, or have done anything, or not done anything, and really notice what your body's already saying to you. I'm sure that it's already talking to you if you really just give it the chance and listen to what it might be saying to you. And of course, the tough part is we have to be willing to do the work. It's not like you're going to go and you're going to get a script or a magic bullet or something. That's the tough part, is you really have to be willing to do the work. And I want to encourage you to add in the foods, both lifestyle and nutritional, and then notice the connection between what you do and how you feel. And really, food is information. It's very powerful information for our bodies. So we want to incorporate these foods, add in. It will naturally crowd out. When you add in the good stuff, it will naturally crowd out the other things, and repeat. And again, referring back to Hippocrates, where he said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Thank you.
Wonderful, Kathleen. Thank you so much. That was great. Yeah, I like those micro concepts of just, you know, adding in more of the good, and letting that crowd out the bad and or the hard. And, you know, our bodies and brains really like to focus on one thing at a time, despite all of our attempts to multitask all the time. You know, so that's really kind of one of the secrets of doing this work is, you know, yes, our minds do want to run away with us, and they want to, you know, think about all of the what ifs, and you know, get carried on to anxieties, and, you know, so, but we can intervene there, and we can focus on adding in the good and adding in the positive, and finding those little micro experiences that feed us, both lifestyle and nutritional. So that's really, really powerful words. And that's really, you know, I think the root of mindfulness-based stress reduction too. And a lot of the exercises that we do when you focus on your body or your experience or your breathing, or you focus on a certain area of where you're holding stress, and you just breathe into it, naturally it will release. And so I want to welcome, and Kathleen, yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. So I want to welcome Nick Laufrey on. Nick, if you're available. So movement, healthy movement, a little tricky for some of us. I feel blessed that we live close to a lot of hiking trails and biking. We can get outside, you know, but healthy movement, no matter where you are, is very, very critical. And there's a lot that you can do from within your home. And Qigong is one of my favorite modalities, you know, very gentle, but very comprehensive, and moves all the different body parts, activates your immune system, your lymphatic system, you know, helps to down regulate your nervous system and balance between the stress part of your nervous system and the relaxation or parasympathetic part of your nervous system. So as in prior weeks, my friend and colleague Nick will join us and lead us through a short Qigong exercise. So welcome, Nick, if you want to jump on and share your screen.
Cool. Oh, am I not being shown?
Yeah, there you are. Got you. So
okay, sweet.
Maybe we'll just, let me.
All right. Well, Qigong, almost all Qigong is done standing. So if you have a little space, you don't need a ton of space, just enough to move your arms around a little bit. Stand with your feet under your shoulders. It can be done from a chair as well, so feel free if there's something wrong with your hips or your knees right now, and you want to do this from a chair, you can totally do it seated and just do whatever I'm doing in my upper body, just mimic the upper body parts. Okay? So once you find yourself in your position, feet under the shoulders if you're standing, let's bring our hands over our belly. We'll just start with connecting to our breath. So you're going to start to imagine like you have a balloon in your belly. So when you inhale, that balloon inflates. Your belly expands a little bit. When you exhale, the balloon deflates. The belly relaxes back in. So there's a few deep, slow breaths like this. So Qigong, Qi, has two meanings. It means energy. Also, sometimes it translates as breath. And this makes a lot of sense. Our breath is the bridge between how we feel emotionally and mentally and how we feel physiologically. When we're stressed, our breath becomes shallow and quick, right? When we're relaxed and calm and at ease, our breath is slow, rhythmic, and deep. We reverse engineer the way we want to feel with our breath. A few more deep abdominal breaths. Your breath going to your belly, helping lead your mind down to your belly. Like our awareness sinks to the bottom of the lake, below the choppy water at the surface, down to the bottom where it's still, calm, and quiet. One more deep breath. Good. We'll start to move with our breath. Bring your hands up, make light fists. We're going to pull our chest forward, pull our elbows and shoulder blades back. And sink the chest back. Bring your elbows, fists forward and around your spine. We'll do this with our breath. Inhale, bring your chest forward, look up. And exhale, sink your chest back, tuck your tailbone under, around your spine. Inhale, bring your chest forward. It's like we're opening the front of the spine. Spine makes a big letter C. And then exhale, spine makes a letter C the other way, opening the back of the spine. Couple more, big breath in. And long breath out. Good, now reach your hands up over the head. Tuck your tailbone under, so instead of being duck-tailed, our tailbone tucks under, drops down. Reach your hands up. This one's called picking cherries. We're just going to reach one hand up at a time. And I just look to lengthen our waist, but keep that tailbone tucked. Stay grounded down in the hip as the hand and the ribs reach up. Your breath doesn't have to link with this one, but keep that breath long and deep. Gently loosening the lower back and the waist. Good. Bring your hands out to the sides. We're going to do drop and swing. This is a little harder to do if you're seated, but just do your best. You're going to drop the left hand behind your back. You come up to the center. Drop your right hand behind your back. Center. So drop, center, drop, center. A little quicker. We're just pumping the arms. Try to literally just drop your arms. So come up and drop, up, drop. Start to use our breath. A little quicker breath on this one. In through the nose, out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. So we use this one to clear stress and clear tension from the upper body. Loosen up the shoulders, upper back, neck, chest. You might notice I do a little bouncing in my knees, a little turn of the waist. My arms aren't doing too much effort, mostly my lower body and my core. This helps to clear the tension we carry in the upper body. Good, come to the center, relax. Nice. Make your feet just a little wider than the shoulders, toes pointing out. This one will loosen up the low back and the hips. It's called the tiger crouches in the grass. We're going to bring our hands up again. This time we're going to make tiger claws. You curl your fingers. We're going to crouch down. Now listen to your body. You don't have to come too low, but if you like, you can bring your hips all the way down towards the floor. Come up. Come down. You don't have to come too low. It might just be a small squat and back up. Those claws face towards your body. The intention is to pull the stress out and then release it down to the earth. So you think of stretch as like a tangible energy. We pull out of our body and send down like sending compost to the earth. Let's use our breath. Inhale. Exhale, long sigh. Inhale up. Exhale out the mouth. Good. One more time. Good. Come up. Bring your hands to your hips. Bring your feet under the shoulders, toes pointing forward. Let's give your hips a little circle. Open the hips and low back. The first step in Qigong is to clear stiffness, tension, stuck energy, stuck joints. They say the Qi should flow like smooth, powerful rivers rather than getting stuck like a stagnant swamp. Let's go the other direction. Open the joints. Good. Now let's add in the arm. We'll open the shoulder, wrist, spine. You take your left hand face up, so I'll mirror you. This one's called teacups. You can imagine you have a cup of tea in your hand. You don't want to spill it, so you keep the hand face up. Your hand's going to come in towards your hip, go back to the left, and over the head. You do a big spiral with the arm. You come in, back, left, forward, over the head. And you can see we did that hip circle for a reason, because we circle the hips here. Your hips move with the hand. Integrating the whole body. Often when we exercise from a sort of modern perspective, we think about the body in all these little compartmentalized pieces. We work our biceps, we work that one hinge, right? With Qigong, we want to integrate the body. So more than the muscle, we're working the fascia. Your fascia is like a wetsuit that you wear on your whole body, made of connective tissue. It connects everything. It doesn't just have little pieces to it. It's all one unit. Let's come around and do the other side. Right palm face up. Come into the hip. Back. Right. Forward. Over the head. Into the hip. Back. Right. Forward. Over the head. Good. Take some deep breaths as you move. Look for the sensation that the movement actually comes from the hips. The hips circling are like they're throwing the arm. It's like you have a whip that goes from your tailbone up your spine all the way to your fingertips. Very nice. And our last warm up, just give your body a little shake. Take a deep breath in the nose and out the mouth. Our Qigong practice always starts with doing things that open up the body, open up where we become stuck. Then we move on to the more energetic, meditative portion, which will be a little shorter than the warm up today. So just one more deep breath in the nose, out the mouth. Slow it down. Pause. Find your Qigong stance. Your feet are under the shoulders, toes pointing forward. The knees aren't locked straight. They aren't too bent either. Just a little soft. Relax your shoulders down. We're going to start to move in this moving meditation. Float the hands up slowly. Float the hands down. As we come up, the elbows are straight. It's like we're being pulled up by the wrist. And then we soften the elbow, come down. There's our breath. Inhale up. Exhale down. Inhale up. Exhale down. So here, there's not much of a physical goal. We're not trying to strengthen or stretch any particular muscle. What we're doing with our body is seeking to affect our mind. As you move slowly, let that slowness invite your awareness to really pay attention to what it feels like to move. What it feels like to breathe slowly and deeply. Let your awareness soak into your body like water into a sponge. And one more. Float it down. And bring the arms around in front of us like you're hugging a tree. The palms are chest height. Your arms should be in a circle like a tree. And you're going to drop your left hand down so it's face towards the earth. And this movement is called cloudy hands. The intention is that the lower hand is like connecting us to the grounding and stability of the earth. And the upper hand is using that to calm the heart. Any stress, emotional turbulence we have, connecting to the earth, calm that down. Now we're going to move with this. So let's shift to our right. Turn a little bit to the right and then switch the hands. So your left hand is up, right is down. We shift to the left, turn to the left, and switch the hands. You shift to the right, turn to the right, switch the hands. So it's three parts: shift, turn, and switch. Shift, turn, and switch. And just start to smooth that out. It becomes one fluid, continuous motion. Don't worry too much if it's perfect. Again, our effect we're looking for is on the mind. Don't get too hung up on your form. Hear our breath. We can exhale as we go one way. Inhale as we go the other. Exhale one direction. Inhale the other. Start to feel the slowness of the movement. Feel its effect on your energy field of your heart. As we move slowly, we reprogram our habit of running from one distraction to another. Become comfortable and at ease in the present moment. Letting go of our hurry and our rushing. Become centered and present. Come to the center. Hold a ball between your hands in front of the heart. Fingers are pointed up. Imagine you've collected sunlight and gathered it into a golden ball of light in your hands. This ball of golden light shines into and reflects in your heart. Your heart glow with golden light. And this golden light representing any positive emotional quality that you would like to cultivate. Perhaps that's more peace and calm. Perhaps it's more joy and gratitude. More forgiveness and love, whatever it is. This golden light represents that energy. Breathe into the heart like we're blowing into the embers of a fire to ignite that energy stronger. Slowly drop the hands down. Step your feet together. Hold your hands over the lower abdomen, just like when we started. But now in this narrow stance, we're really going to relax. This posture we call bamboo in the wind. Just relax so much that your body rocks and sways. Take a few slow, calming breaths. Just allow this strange thing we call chi to flow through us. It's about 3 deep breaths here. Stepping out with your feet. Circle your belly. Close our practice by here, this area we call the lower dantian. It's actually the center of gravity in women, and is a place that basically in Qigong we say we feel the most centered when we bring our awareness and our breath and our Qi here. 1 deep breath here. And pause. Take a breath in. We'll let our hands go with a sigh. Very good. Thus concludes our practice. Thank you for joining, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Nick. That was wonderful, as always. Just, the movement aspect of Qigong combined with the breathing, combined with the mental peace and the, calming of the brain, calming of the nervous system really makes it wonderfully powerful. And just briefly before we move to Valerie, the idea of the fascia inside of our bodies connecting every part of our body to every other part. There's this invisible web. And it's very powerful and extremely strong. You've seen it if in different animal environments, but it's incredible how it connects each part of our body to the next. And doing movements like these that really incorporate swaying movements, wide arm movements, twisting and turning, and combined with a deep breathing, really helps to set up communication inside of the body. And like Kathleen talked about, getting those things that feed us, social, emotional, spiritual, physical, the foods and the water, getting all that information into our body through our eyes, ears, nose, mouth, etc., is one thing. But then getting that information assimilated, absorbed, and then moved throughout the body is another. And practices like Qigong are really powerful for that, to just get the body communicating, get things flowing, get things moving. I, for one, like many of us, spend way too much time in a frozen position all day with my arms in front of me typing and my face staring at a screen, especially these days. So everything that we can do, we can take little micro breaks during the day to get moving and do some of these exercises, I think is really powerful. So thank you, Nick. So Valerie, thanks for being with us today. And we'll move towards whatever content you have for us to present.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I so enjoy being here. You can hear me okay? Uh-oh. Okay, great. So I really appreciate what Kathleen said about add in, crowd out, repeat. And if there's one thing we take away from the work that, the overlapping work that Nick and I do, it's the slow, deep breathing. Nick is so right when he talks about how you can reverse engineer stress. You know, the flight, fight, flash that happens, fight, flight, faint, freeze, as we know, which occurs in a couple of seconds and can actually double our heart rate and blood pressure during that time, is automatic as blinking our eyes. But we have to do something deliberately to slow down and reset ourselves. And out of all the instinctual responses that go with flight, fight, guess what? Breathing is the only thing that's under our conscious control, provided we haven't done, you know, hundreds of hours of biofeedback. So the more we practice this, the more we add in, that's going to automatically crowd out flight, fight when it catches us, when we're watching the news or thinking about money or whatever. And it's just a great thing to keep doing. So thank you for that program, Nick. So today we're going to continue with, actually, Nick and I didn't talk about this, but talking about the quality that we wish we had more of. And we're going to do that through some mindfulness stress reduction. So as ever, I invite you to get more comfortable and more relaxed. I'd love to see you, you know, feet flat on the floor. Make sure.
Sorry to interrupt, Valerie, but I think you muted yourself accidentally just there, just for a second.
Okay.
There you go. You're back.
I'm
Thank
back
you.
on. Awesome.
Yeah, thanks so
Thanks
much.
for catching that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes the buttons seem to be a bit slow to reflect what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so get yourself prepared, mint gum out of your mouth, nothing on your lap. And once again, we'll take maybe 10 minutes, 12 minutes. I love to keep these short and swift because each deep dive that you take can get deeper and deeper. And of course, we're all more likely to practice something provided it's simple and easy. And that's what I'm a firm believer in. So as ever, go ahead and start by closing your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. If not, simply avert your gaze so it's relaxed and resting in a way that's familiar and comfortable for you. And as ever, we're going to start by continuing those slow, deep, circular breaths, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. As I've mentioned before, this is simply a more effective oxygen delivery system. In slowly, lightly, steadily. Out through the mouth. And because it's more effective, more efficient, our heart doesn't have to work so hard to pump blood and oxygen out to our tissues. And when our heart doesn't have to work so hard, that triggers an entire neurochemical, physiological chain reaction that promotes ease, calm, resetting our nervous system. As you center down and begin to replace thinking with awareness, thoughts with sensory awareness, that will even further bring you into a state of focused, calm clarity. Breathing in through your nose, slowly as you can, so steadily, and lightly, steadily blowing out through your mouth. And when you think of the stress in your life today, most of us feel, at times at least, not quite up to the task. And we wish we had more quality of, we wish we had more patience, more understanding, more resilience. Maybe we wish we were bolder and more decisive. Perhaps we just wish we had more energy, mental, emotional, or physical. Whatever it is that we just wish we had more of, like shining that light of that right into our heart center. Think about your issues, your challenges and problems, and what qualities, what traits within yourself that you wish you had more of in order to rise to and resolve your challenges. Then think of 2 or 3 traits that would do. And just kind of mentally file those away, because we're going to return to those in a few minutes. And first, before we return, of course, we're going to center down even more with a few more breaths. And let a memory of a time in your life when you had those qualities, when you were as ferocious as a lion or as calm as a smooth running river, smooth flowing river, when you were more resilient or had more energy. Think of a memory that comes to mind from the past when this was so for you. You're filled with those qualities, those traits that you thirst for today. And if you want to grow those qualities and have never had an abundance of them, think of a role model. It could be from the movies or a book. It could even be a friend who has a lot of those traits that you wish that you had today. And get an image of that time with your role model, with yourself, and feel into that. Remember what that was like to have that trait, those couple of traits, strong and pulsating within you, very much alive. Recall right now how you moved, how you held yourself, how you walked across the room. Recall how those traits allowed you to address challenges or to get a good night's rest. And feel into that even more. Perhaps you recall how your voice sounded when you're filled with the energy of those traits, those lovely qualities that you do possess and rightfully deserve more of right now. And allow the energy of this trait or traits to grow so you can feel it behind your eyelids. Allow that trait and energy to fill the volume of your body and to radiate out from every cell in your entire body. And continue to take a few slow, deep breaths where you're leaning in, where you're breathing into that trait that you want more of, so that it radiates more and more through every organ, through your bones, through your muscles, through your hair, skin. Allow it to fill more and more with every breath you take, dropping that trait right down into the very center, the very core of you. So you feel it fully and completely, your body, spirit, in your emotions, in your soul. Perhaps it has a color that you breathe in. Allow it to fully saturate and permeate more and more so that it's so strong that it produces for you some kind of meter or knob or dial, which is a really great tool to have. So now you can turn the dial up on this trait. You can move the needle and experiment with it, filling up not just your body, your heart, your spirit, and your mind, but outflowing beyond your own skin, out a couple of inches. And notice what color it is and how your mood, your mind, your emotions become even more aligned in supporting the growth of this trait. Taking a few more slow, deep breaths, enjoying this fully and freely, so that you notice that with each breath, this trait, your qualities, flows out even more. So rather than just an inch or two, it's now enveloping you in a luminous sphere, a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, beyond your physical body, while it permeates every atom and fiber of your whole being. Breathe it in and feel how good that is to rightfully own and claim that which you already are. And allow yourself to turn that dial or meter or needle to the place that's most comfortable, most at ease. Don't worry at all about it being just the right amount. You'll find your own natural set point to find that needle or dial go to exactly the place that's best for you, so you're radiant to qualities that you love. And now take a look back at your original issues, your challenges, your triggers, the problems you face right now, today, and in your life. And see yourself addressing these challenges, radiant and luminous, with your own internal strength and wonderful qualities. And see that there's a better way to take on these challenges. There's a better state that you now have available freely and fully to address these issues. And filled with gratitude for your mind body, allowing you to have this privilege, this joy, these good qualities. See yourself working through what can be worked through with your challenges, your issues. See how swiftly they change as you found a more effective way to deal. And take all the time you need. You'll have 1 minute, which is all the time you need to fully and freely see yourself radiant with your qualities and traits, working through every hour, perhaps every day, every week, all related challenges that flow your way. Filled with gratitude for your newfound ability. See yourself fixing these because you have a complete balance of what you best deserve to have, starting now.
Thank you, Valerie.
And you're so welcome.
So thanks everyone for joining us. Special thanks to our guests today, Kathleen Mitchell, Nick Laufrey. Thank you, Valerie, for your presentation. Thanks to Dr. Asfor for his. And for everyone out there ongoing, this continues to be obviously challenging. Our hope, as always, is that we can offer you a place to gather and a place to get information, a place to understand, sort of medical and societal updates, but also to understand ways that we can work together and on our own to nourish ourselves and feed ourselves, during these difficult times. And as always, our goal here at CCFM is to provide the most comprehensive possible care that we can. And really, always keeping our eye on all these different aspects that really are critical for people to thrive, to live healthy lives, and to recover from complex chronic illnesses. So, we're again honored that you're here. Please, if you're interested or other folks who might want to join us, feel free to invite them. Before we pause, I just want to share some stories, some positive news out there in contrast to some of the more negative or stressful or scary stories. We saw this week that oil companies are collapsing, but wind and solar energy has actually passed, renewable energy past the production of oil and coal this week for the first time. And that's an incredible, incredible landmark that we could be grateful for. And I don't think we'll ever go back to the way it was before. You know, a lot of those coal plants, once they're shut down, are very difficult to reopen. And so there, you know, I think there's a lot of potential here for this pandemic epidemic to have pushed our society in some really exciting and new ways, and you know, for which we will all benefit in the long run. Already, many of you have heard stories of, you know, places across the world where, because of less humans or because of less pollution, these amazing sights have occurred. This is a picture of flamingos flocking to lakes in India, you know, because less humans are out. And you know, thousands of these flamingos took over this lake in Mumbai. Similarly, as many of you heard, in Venice, the canals are clearer than they have been in modern memory, and there were fish and I believe even dolphins swimming in these canals, showing up. This is an image of some doctors and nurses who took this ICU patient outside, rolled them outside, a coronavirus patient, to give them some sunshine and some natural light and healing. Beautiful, perfect rainbow that appeared across New York City. This was on Easter. A woman who was in the hospital for her weekly chemotherapy treatment, and her husband is there with her, can't be in the hospital with her, but there he is across the street with a sign in support of her, sending her love and wishes and support from just across that road. Doctors and healthcare workers, you know, obviously this face is pretty disconcerting. It's covered, protected. You can't tell who that person is. You can't really see their smile. And some of them are posting their picture on the outside of their PPE equipment and shirts and gowns, and you know, this is what I look like. This is who I am. This is who's caring for you. I thought that was a really nice touch. You know, countries like Germany taking in, who, you know, Germany has managed to really do a great job and protect their capacity in the hospitals, but taking in patients from other countries who are affected and don't have the capacity. You know, number of different folks giving out love and appreciation to healthcare workers. This is 3 kids from the royal family in England clapping for the caregivers. Hotels opening up their buildings and providing accommodations for homeless people. This is an Instagram image from the UK. This is also happening here in the Bay Area. For the first time, many of these people have a steady place to stay for at least a period of time and a break from the streets. Penguins, this is an aquarium in Chicago, an image of these penguins who were given the opportunity to walk through the hallways of the aquarium, which they had never done before, and visit some of their other aquarium mates. Italy, I think, really leads the charge for you know, quarantine dance-alongs. Quarantine sing-alongs. I don't know, Valerie, can you guys hear it when the sound plays? It's playing through my, okay,
No,
so I
can't
won't play
hear
it
it.
then. You guys can see these if you're curious. This is on l.com, UK Life and Culture. Quarantine sing-alongs, mass applause for healthcare workers. A lot of that was in Italy. Quarantine bingo in Spain, you know, with the names and letters and numbers called out over a loudspeaker for the group. And, you know, opportunity for free content all over the place, to opera, to museums, to different, you know, opportunities for all of us to connect and you know, get through this together. So everybody, thank you again for joining us. Please stay safe out there, and we look forward to being with you again next week. Thank you very much.